Hi and welcome to the video. In this video what I intend to do is to take this Bruder D90 Land Rover and fit radio control to it. The Bruder models, in my experience, tend to be very high quality. The plastic is high quality moulding and hard plastic, and the biggest challenge that I've always found is getting the things apart, because they're designed to be child friendly, which means that kids shouldn't be able to take them to bits. I've already dismantled most of this, and to do that I mainly just use this small flathead screwdriver, and what you have to do is you have to get behind the tabs and bend them, or in some cases even break them. Having done that, I've actually got a body that will snap back together again quite easily, but actually come apart easily without using the screwdriver. So if I just take you through the parts which I've dismantled, this was actually the last piece to come off the roof, and the tabs for this, the four round the bottom, are inside the bed of the truck here, and they're quite easy to get to. The harder ones were the two at the front, and you may be able to see that they've got little notches on them here, and actually with a bit of pushing from the screwdriver in the back you can kind of gently ease it off. You have to be careful to make sure that you're not snapping anything. I've taken out the engine, and the reason for that is because I'm actually going to be opening up the front here to accommodate the speed controller. The tabs which hold the body on, there's two at the back here, a couple here in the middle. These two here were particularly difficult to do, and I've actually ended up virtually breaking them off, but that's no bad thing. And then there are a couple at the front. You just have to ease your way gently and not pull anything too hard, and it will all come off. The seating arrangement is actually attached to the body, but that comes off easily enough. Again, it's just on these two tabs here. I'm going to be fitting it over this area here as I go along, to make sure that everything I put inside here actually fits. Probably the biggest challenge is getting the rear wheels off. And just so that you have some idea of what you're up against, this is what the end of the axle looks like, and you'll see that it's ribbed, and the only way that it's coming out is with shear force pulling it off. But you want to be very careful not to damage the hole that's left behind. And the way that I did this was I levered the whole rear axle out, and it's got a couple of tabs here, here, here and here, as well as two here for it to be able to rock with. And I just eased it out gently with the screwdriver, and in order to get the wheels off, because the axle was in one piece through here. Right, so what I did was I used a Dremel carbon disc, and I just cut it a little bit at a time whilst revolving the axle until it came apart. You then had two axles inside wheels, and I popped the axle end into vise and then used a claw hammer to gently pull it out. This one here didn't come out too well, but the other one wasn't too bad, and the spare wheel on the back of the truck is obviously perfect. So I'm actually going to be using that one and putting this slightly damaged one onto the back of the truck. For the components which I'm going to introduce to it, for the drive I'm going to be using the Tamiya generic gearbox, which is quite a cheap set to buy. The motor that I'm going to use is actually a higher voltage. I think that the one in here is probably 3 volt. I'm going to be using the 6 volt motor, and if I can find the spec I'll post it in the description, which I actually used in this vehicle, which I've got on one of my other videos. If it all works, I'll have to buy it a new motor, but that's not very expensive or difficult to do. For the speed controller, I'm just using one which came with a radio control truck that I bought recently, but I didn't use its speed controller, so this is just a cheap generic car speed controller. I'll be using an orange Spectrum compatible receiver. This works with the older Spectrum car transmitters because it's DSM or DSM2 I think it is, which isn't compatible with the new black speed controllers. Going to be using a 7.4 LiPo, and this one is 1300 milliamp hours, so the truck will go for a very long time. And for the servo, I'm using a little Hobby King one, and on here it says HK151788. It's probably not very easy to read, just hold it there for a second, but this is the one which I'll be using. I'm expecting to be able to put this gearbox in there somehow, which is going to mean some cutting out, and I'm hoping that I can retain the suspension ability so that it moves when it goes over objects. The steering servo I think is going to go somewhere in there underneath the seat. Quite a good trick with this sort of plastic is that if you score it, you create lines for things to snap along. So I'll score it along there. Score it along there. Snip it there. And there. That all comes out quite nicely. There. And that's nice and neat. I don't really need this piece going across here. It may be useful for the wires too, so I'll just take some of that out. Not really serving any purpose, but what it does is it gives me some more room, which may be good for fitting the speed controller later. Now I know that I'm going to want more space in the bonnet here, that's why I took the motor thing off. I may put it back on afterwards, but I certainly don't need this area in the middle. So again, using the scoring trick, it's easier if I drill a hole in it first. and everything in here actually looks quite neat. I've got to be extremely careful that you're always cutting away from your fingers in case the knife slips. And the other thing which I did was I made sure that I used a new blade. So that should give me good access to the bonnet area, gives me a bit more room in there, and if I want to I can always put the motor back. Yeah, I won't put it in there now because these clips here will try and hold on tight, but I'm sure you get the idea. Right, so the next thing to do is to test the electronics. I did find out that the speed controller that I was going to use doesn't work, and so it went in the bin, but I chopped off the wires and kept those. So let's just test this quickly. So steering servo, that's fine, so we know that that's centered. And then the speed controller I'm using now is an M-Tronics Viper Oval Eco. Basically, it's a pretty basic speed controller that goes the same forwards as backwards, and it hasn't got any brake. Just making sure that's going the right way around. I haven't actually soldered the wires yet to the motor. Well, I have soldered them, but I haven't put the heat shrink on because I have a feeling that the motor might need to go in from underneath. So that seems quite good. And I just wanted to see if the gearbox went at a sensible speed. So that's quite a good top speed, and in terms of the amount of torque, it has got a lot of torque, so the car's never going to stop due to the motor and the gearbox. Right, that all seems pretty good, and let's move on to the next stage. Right, now the next thing which I want to do is I want to try fitting the steering servo. Let's just get this off. That's it. And I have decided to trim this area here. I wasn't really that bothered about the steering wheel inside turning. I wanted the steering to be as free as possible. Now, this servo is going to sit around there, and I know that this tab is likely to get in the way, so I'm going to trim that off, and I'm going to make a little plate to sit on the top here. The plate which I marked out is 21 by 32 millimeters. I'll just score it along here. Score it there. I'm using 2mm plastic card, which is quite a good modelling material to have around. Right, let's just check that. So that's going to sit against this piece here and on top of the piece there, and I can see that the steering still moves fine. So what I'll do is I'll get some super glue on that and get that stuck down. Make sure that still moves freely, which it does. Get some accelerator on there. That should be good. Excellent. Need to keep testing. The seat still fits, so we're still okay because because I was a little bit nervous here of something interfering, so that's okay. Now the next thing to think about is the servo itself, and I'm going to be having a rod down to this piece here. It looks like there's plenty of room inside the seat. I can probably come back quite a bit. So what I want to do is just test to see where I can put it. I think it's going to go about there. So the servo is pushed right up against this piece here, and when I put the top on, it fits absolutely fine. And I can see that there's going to be a reasonable amount of room in there. Right, so the next thing to do is to try and link the servo to this thing here, and the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to first of all determine what length of arm here I can actually get away with. So it's very unlikely that I'll be able to get away with the full length. So let's just push that on. That's that. So nope, I can't have the full length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep chopping it down till I can. So I've taken the first 2 holes off. Let's see if that's okay. Still hitting, but only just, by the look of it. Try that. So that's 3 holes removed. Get out of the way. Right, so the next thing which I need to do is I need to use this device here to bend the end of a 1/2mm rod, like so. And that is going to go through here. So I'm using 2mm drill bit here. I think it must be 2mm rod, and just get a hole in there. It's about as low as I can get. That, and so that will push backwards and forwards nicely. Now I'm going to want to keep the whole thing as low as possible, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a bend about halfway along. So, and then what I'm going to want is I'm going to want that to match up with the hole in the servo arm. So the way you do that, there's a little point on these things. and you push that in where you want it to match up, straighten up the wheels, that. Hard to believe this is going to work, but there we go. That's, I reckon it's about there. Soon find out. That's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. Right, chop that off. There. Then all I'm going to need to do is pop that off, drill a hole, make it nice and big. So that's on, and if I put the wheels straight, that will be there. Push that on, so give it a quick go. Let's move the camera around so you can see the wheels properly. That seems like a pretty good amount of steering, and then the big question is, can I still fit the seats and everything on? Let's try that. I would say not, and I think that the problem is that this piece here is sticking upwards, so I'm going to have to bend it round. It's better for me to just take the whole thing out for a moment. So I need to bend that round a bit. Do it there. That ought to do it. And it will still work exactly the same. Just check. That's working fine. That's sitting nicely. I'll just hold it down. The seat isn't being moved around by me moving the steering wheel, and it will all seat properly. Get the screw in. Always got to be careful not to strip thread when you're doing that. I think I'm happy with that. Good. Now for the rear end. Now what I have discovered is that this 1/8 copper tube fits quite precisely inside the wheels. That's quite a tight fit, and it's kind of a loose fit over the axles here. So I'm going to use that to bridge the gap between the two, and the first thing I need to do is work out how long this needs to be. So, taking the front end, measuring the track between the two tyres in a sort of a relaxed kind of position, that seems to be about 80mm. Putting two of the wheels completely to the ends of the shafts seems to be, I would say, about, this is quite a critical measurement, so I need to get it right. Push them right the way in. About 62mm. So, if that's 62 and I want it to be 80, that means that this needs to be 9mm longer each side than these. Let's just check these. One side is 31, the other side is 32. Let's just check that again. No, actually, so if it's 32 each side, 31, I don't mind the rear track being slightly wider, so let's say I want each of these to be 40mm long. We can check the measurement afterwards to see how it all works out, but I think that 40mm is what I'm looking for. So I'll just measure out 40mm on here. 40mm. Now I'm going to cut these with a Dremel and get them both the same. Right, I've got these both pretty well identical. There we go, like that. If I put the wheels on, near enough spot on 80, so that's going to be fine. Now I'm not going to glue these yet, because what I want to do is incorporate this arrangement here so that I can have the suspension. Now I think it's going to be quite important for me to cut this accurately, so trying to find a way to hold it. Now what I want to do is I want to cut just that side of these little tabs, and to cut as straight as I can. So I'm going to want to be able to hold it. I'll just grab something. Just some plastic washers I had lying around. seems to be okay. I just want to be able to support it and make sure that it stays straight. Easier said than done. One. Two. They're not perfectly straight, but I don't think that's too critical. I'll just trim them slightly with a knife. Just getting it about right by eye. That's okay. Right, now for this next part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide these over the top, which is where I'm going to get my alignment from. I'm just making sure that the wheels are still okay, and they seem to be. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to glue those in place, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these copper pipes to actually give me the alignment. So if the plastic that I trimmed isn't perfectly square, it's not the end of the world, because the glue will fill in the gap and the plastic pieces will be aligned by these copper pipes. So I'm going to want the motor to actually go that way up, and these bits here are where the springs go. The tabs go to the inside, so they're going to go like that. I'm going to try and make the whole thing as straight as I can. Like so. Right, so for this next bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Evo Stick Epoxy Express. I'll clean everything with alcohol first, then I just need to put the glue on and leave it to set for about 15 minutes. Right, so it started raining outside and these seem to have set reasonably. I've left them for about an hour, so there's a little bit of movement left, but not much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue the copper tube onto the axles and then glue the wheels onto those. Now what I really don't want to do is to have glue round the end of the shafts, because I don't want these gluing themselves to the casing. So I will be periodically moving stuff, and what I'm hoping to be able to do is to post glue down the tube and then slide it on, and that ought to give me enough glue. I'll just get a cocktail stick because I think that's probably the best way for me to get it down there. Now this glue sets quite quickly, so I have to do it all quite fast. That's more than enough. That's that. That's not to say that it cures quickly, just that you don't get much working time. That's okay. Just need a bit of tissue. Make sure there's none around the end there. Pop that on like so. And get some more. Get it down inside there. That ought to be okay. Tissue to wipe off the excess. And slide it on. Seems to be trying to pull itself off. In order to keep everything square, I've ended up putting it into the vise. I'm just going to leave it there to dry. I've made sure that there's a small gap between the end of the shaft on the wheels and these black frames, about the same on each side, probably about 1 millimetre. Well, the wheels have been left overnight and I'm quite happy with this result. Having the axle going straight into the wheel, and also given that this is a relatively soft plastic that they use to make the wheel with, if you were to really twist it would come off. I suppose that it is possible just to put a collar around the outside, but I think that for the purposes of this I think it's fine. If it does come off, that's what I will do. The next job is to try and get that mounted there. These two bits which stick up here actually locate onto the springs, so I can see exactly where it is that I want to go. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these two bits here sticking up so that I'm flat and I can mark things out. Again, I'm going to use the scoring trick with a sharp knife to make it easier to break off. That's pretty good. Now that's going to give me a better idea of where I want it to go. The rear end here is symmetrical. This end here, the motor is off to one side. I'm going to want the hole to be slightly larger or slightly wider than the motor so that we can get the rocking effect, but I don't really want it moving backwards and forwards. So I'm going to put a line across here. I'm pretty well going to want to follow the edge. I'll score it across the end here because that will help it to break in the right place. Right, having done some carving about off camera because it took a few minutes, I think I've got it just about how I want it. So these little tabs here hook on the part underneath here to keep it in. So let's just slide it in there. Click it in, and so we have suspension. It doesn't actually want to go anywhere, so I think that I'm going to leave it like that. I might return to it and carve a little bit more off. The wheels are pretty straight. I think that's not bad. Not bad at all. Right, in order to stop the motor moving up and down too much and coming loose from the suspension, just put it back in. What I need to do is I need to find a way of keeping the motor at about the right angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drilling a couple of holes. Putting in some packing foam first of all to keep the thing about central, and secondly to help keep it level. Just be about that. Like so, and then taking a couple of cable ties and putting them through the holes. Getting them around the right way there. Doesn't want to be too tight because you still want the suspension to work. It does. And I think that's going to be pretty well okay. The axles don't seem to want to jump out, and when the motor's under torque you aren't going to get the whole gearbox rocking or twisting too much. Great. Right, everything at the rear here seems to be pretty well perfect. Now the only thing stopping this rear axle from popping out are the tiny little tabs hooking it to the inside. Now I don't have a problem here, but I can see how after a while, going over lots of jumps and bumps and things, it could be possible that they get strained. So what I'm going to do as an extra safety precaution, and actually if you've kind of messed up cutting around here a little bit, you might like to do it anyway, is to just reinforce the amount of movement with tie wraps. So I'll just quickly do that. Now the problem is that if I was to go over the top here, the body wouldn't be able to sit flush, because I just tried it. So the way that this will work is you post one tie wrap through there, loop it underneath like that, so that it's kind of a loose fit, but it won't let it go any further. And then you take a second tie wrap, chop off the excess because you only want the end bit, and just push it down until it's loosely flush. That isn't tight on there, but it will stop it pulling out any further. Now we have no danger of this ever pulling out on its own accord. Now for the next stage, just as with everything else, the challenge here isn't making the thing work, but it's getting all the electronics etc. hidden away and things not fouling. I want to put this receiver in the front. I've also got to put the speed controller in, but just before I do, I want to put the receiver in. Now the speed controller is going to sit on the top here, and in order to make room for the receiver, I want it to go in the bottom here, but there's a piece of plastic in the way. So using my scoring technique, I'm going to mark it on the bottom, and at the sides of this. Then get the side cutters, and then on those pliers, trying to get as close to the bottom as I can. Last night I put another piece of plastic card in here which I glued on the top, and it's kind of on two very short little posts, and I was able to thread this wire here which goes to the receiver, and I'm actually going to start by getting that plugged in. So make sure the wires all stretch, because I don't really want to put a servo extension lead in. That's in. And that's going to sit nicely, and I know that this goes through the tunnel like so, so everything will fit fine. Next thing to do is to install the speed controller, and I think the best way for me to do that is to put the body on, like so. That's all fitted properly, because it does fit in there, but it only just fits in there. And what I want to do is put it just there in a place where I know the body will go on, and you can see how the receiver is nicely out of the way inside there. Yeah, with these electronic speed controllers, I always find that the isopropanol alcohol is an absolute must if you want anything to stick down. It's double-sided sticky tape. I think that this is maybe the 3M variety. There are quite a few on the market, and you can buy them in hardware stores. I use it all the time. The tricky bit is always getting the clear plastic layer off. Once it starts to come off, it's very easy. Right, I'm going to put the speed controller in this way around. Well, it's fit in there once, so it should do it again. That's it. So it's an absolute precision fit, but we know that the body goes on with that, and the wire's going to have to get tucked away down the sides. Right, let's get the body off. This wire here, the throttle, plugs into the receiver, and I'll just tuck that wire away in down here. So that's nicely out of the way. These two here are for the motor, and I have to go down the side here. Everything is going to have to go down this tunnel. So I'll just put that there for a moment. And similarly, the other motor wire. And then this one here, I'll tuck these down the side. I'm just going to go down there through to the back. The next job for me to do will be to solder the ends of the motor wires onto these two wires here. Just before I do, I'm going to check the fit of the body again, and I'm going to see if I can leave the on-off switch inside the bonnet, because I'd quite like to do that. Yep, everything seems to go down nicely, and this on-off switch, just rest it there for a moment and the bonnet shuts without any problem, so I can leave that inside there. That's good, and that's quite neat. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful about the routing of the battery connector. I think that what I'll do is I'll post it through the back of the seat here. Yeah, I'll post it through the back of the seat here, so that it's just floating around in the back of the truck there, and it gives me a choice of where I put the battery. Having soldered the two motor wires on, just a quick test to make sure everything's working. So that's forward, and that's reverse, so that's all okay. Let's turn it off. The only thing remaining to do, really, I guess, is put it together and give it a go. The cable tie around this end seems like a sensible idea, so it all goes through the tunnel easily. Right there. And I don't want anything fouling with the steering, so we have one at that end. One somewhere around the middle. Seems about right. Post power cable through. Everything should sit nicely. Which it does. Bring that out of the way. That's out of the way. Out of the way. Grill. Switch and go there. So I don't think they lock in any way. Oh, they do, that's not so bad. That's better. Right. So plug in the battery. So you push the battery in and then you push it down. I think that's okay. Next thing is the top, and I expect that I need to so push these in, and then that's in. Starting to look good. Back door. I can't believe I'm having trouble with this after everything I've just done. One door. The other door. Last not least, spare wheel. And there we have it. Right, better give it a quick test. All in all, I think that's a pretty successful project. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful and maybe given you ideas for yourself. Please post anything that you want to say in the comments below. Thank you for watching.